Bet on Bears fans, another edition of the Chicago Bears podcast coming your way. Pat the designer, Courtney Cronin back at it again. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love to another episode. A lot to get to on today's episode. I want to hear from you guys, the fans. Is Bears Packers finally not the same old Bears versus Packers heading into this week? Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. This episode is brought to you by Underdog. Make picks, win money. Courtney, how are you?
I'm good. It's cold out there. We just got in off the practice field. They are getting prepared for what's going to be a very cold, blustery game Sunday afternoon. I mean, it's going to be pitch black about an hour into that game at 4:25.
It becomes a night game real quick.
Very quickly. So yeah, they're in the elements right now, getting ready for that.
Are sleeves being allowed at practice?
Yeah, I think they're trying to be smart about it. With the injuries that they're dealing with right now, it is a good sign for them that TJ Edwards is out there. One thing I noticed, because yesterday was obviously the first day, there was an injury report. They did not practice. It was an estimation, but everybody was talking about like TJ Edwards in this cast, like thinking that it would be the club on his, I want to say it's his right hand. It is, no, you could see like his gloves. So you could see the fingers. Like it isn't like something that's like wrapped around really heavy. It's just more so around, I guess,
like a wrist cast almost.
Yeah. And I definitely noticed that when they were going through drills, he was having a little trouble hanging on to passes that were coming his way. And now maybe that's something that they'll have to adjust with the way that his cast looks if he's able to play. But just something I was, a little surprised just in the way that it was described, that it would be clubbed up initially. But obviously for practice, it didn't look like that today. I would imagine that however it looks in practice is how it will look in the game. So something to keep an eye on.
That'll be interesting to see. I always like that old school, just full club where the guy actually uses it to like beat a helmet to get a guy out of the way. That always cracks me. I think Julius Peppers had that for a little while. He was still sacking the quarterback like every other play.
Probably makes a peanut punch a lot easier when you already have the protection around your hand to like pop the ball out. But we'll see. I mean, I think it'll hurt like hell in a game, especially in the cold, because that thing's frozen. The ball's gonna be frozen out there to begin with. But I'm curious to see how he's able to protect himself too from risk of re-injury. We haven't talked to him since he sustained that injury, but it is something that I think is pretty notable to see him out there. Noah Sewell was out there. Kyle Monangai was back. I know that on the injury report Wednesday, it said that he would have been DNP had they been on the field. Rome Odunze was not there. So that one is, he's got obviously, I think, the foot injury that's been something that's kind of persistent with him throughout the season, foot, heel, that whole area. So keep an eye on that one because we did not see him out there on Thursday.
Let's hope that we're able to get Rome back for this game. I know he's chomping at the bit to get into this game because this is the first time in a while here, Courtney, that it feels like Bears fans have been able to get a little chesty going into Bears Packers. Now, we always do in a certain sense, right? But like actually having some real evidence to say we are a team that can come into this game and compete. And I think that there's more on the line than just what we're seeing right on the surface level. Of course, there's the divisional seeding and things like that. But I was on with Jim, Matt, and Molly yesterday. And I'll be honest with you, like there's this feeling that if it goes south here in the Bears game a little bit, that maybe it gets a little bit, the voices that seem crazy to us here in Chicago get a little bit louder on LaFleur not getting the job done. Is this week not the same old Bears versus Packers week? There's always animosity. It's always crazy amongst the fans. But I think this actually gets crazy between coaches and players in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you think back to January when, like, the thing I love about the way that Ben Johnson delivers a message, nothing he says has not already been thought about with a calculated angle behind it. So when he stands, like I'm in the room where the press conference was at the PNC Center on January 20th, whatever day that was. And when he's like, I'm excited to be, it was a priority for me to stay in the NFC North. I want to go up against Kevin O'Connell. I want to go up against Dan Campbell. I want to, I look forward to beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. Like when he launches that barb, and I think, it was a little certainly tongue-in-cheek, playful. I don't know if Matt LaFleur took it as playful, but
he did not.
It was something that I thought
pander.
It reignited the rivalry in a way that it needed to be, because like 2 weeks before that, 2.5 weeks before that, the Bears go up to Green Bay. They finish off a 5-12 season with a win. And I know that people poke holes in that and say, oh, well, the Packers weren't playing all their starters at the end. They'd already been securing their spot for the playoffs, whatever. It's still significant. And that's what you talk about with these players, about can there be any sort of carryover effect? And different team, different year, I get that. But they had not beaten the Packers up in Lambeau Field since the 2015 season. That was significant for them to go in there and get that win. Caleb to lead his, first game-winning drive of his career. And now, when you take a look at this matchup, you don't see these two teams pretty much ever 1 and 2 in the division. Like, this stat was staggering when I saw it. So that they're both teams are above 500. This is only the 7th regular season meeting between the Bears and Packers where both teams enter the matchup with an at least 500 record. So since World War II,
ever
since World War II, it marks the 3rd time that's happened. The others came in 1961 and 2001. Like, I can understand why people outside of Chicago, outside of Green Bay, really just outside of Chicago, view the Packers' biggest rivalry in the division to be the Vikings, because that has been a much more even matchup over the last couple of decades. This has been one-sided. So I think it is a very different rivalry when you've got two teams that are 1 and 2. This game goes for the NFC North. There's 3 games this weekend where the division's on the line: Colts and Jaguars, Steelers and Ravens, and Bears Packers. And Bears Packers has 2 teams that you look at right now saying, of any of the 6 I mentioned, these are probably the 2 most viable playoff contenders there are right now. And that's different. It's just that carries a different element of intrigue to the game on Sunday, because it sets up so much going into then the final 4 games of the season. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal about how they approach it and about what this win will mean going into the following week against the Browns.
Listen, the Bears have a lot going in their favor right now, starting to get healthy at the right time. And I'll be honest with you, Courtney, when I look at this matchup, I see a Bears team that since the bye week has averaged 180 rush yards per game, who now, DeAndre Swift named NFC Player of the Week for what he was able to do last season. I would argue one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in football right now. Depends on what you get out of Ozzie Trapillo, where he's still kind of the biggest question mark in them solidifying that spot. But you've definitely got 4 top 5 pieces on your offensive line right now. It almost feels like Bears fans shouldn't go into this game with same old Packers mindset of like we're excited, but we're not confident. It does feel like you should be confident going into this game with all of those things, and Ben Johnson on top of that, who we've seen scheme some phenomenal game plans versus tough defenses all season.
I mean, yeah, and they scheme well against the Packers over the last couple of years. There's a reason that he made that comment about going up against a Matt LaFleur team, is because when he was the OC of the Lions, they were 5-1 in those 6 seasons, or in those 3 seasons, in those 6 games against the Packers. So you take that on top of everything else you've seen, the dominance of that performance, the 9-point win that they had in Philadelphia. Like, the score didn't indicate at the end how much the Bears dominated that game. Time of possession by nearly 19 minutes. The offensive line taking advantage up front and creating these huge holes. The run game, the opportunistic defense. All of these things then factor into, can that carry over into this game? And it feels like there are several areas where they're going to have the advantage that you could expect the type of performance you got in building up to 9-3, especially last week, to carry over. Like, Declan Doyle talked about it today, like with all the misdirection, the motions, the shifts that they run out of those formations, like that's stuff that can absolutely be a part of every week's game plan. Now, how effective they're going to be able to execute that, of course, is like based on the opponent's defense. Their defensive line's super banged up right now. Devontae Wyatt might not play in this game. He was DNP on Wednesday. He's got, I believe it's an ankle injury. Like, there's so many things.
Didn't they declare him out for the season already? I think he's already been ruled out for the season.
He's on the injury report, so I don't know if they put him on IR yet or not. But like, it's something that I think is absolutely notable, though, where I know that a lot of these games, and they're not favored in this game. I believe the Packers are a 6.5-point favorite. Like, they're still going to be viewed as an underdog, but I don't know if they necessarily are in totality and reality of the situation based on the strength of this roster and what it's shown it can do.
Yeah, this is from Rob Demovsky. So heading into this game, Bears will have an advantage for sure. He won't play in this game, so there'll be an advantage on the interior. But this is bigger for the future of this game. The ankle injury that Devontae Wyatt sustained in Green Bay's win over Detroit on Thanksgiving will end the defensive tackle season per Matt LaFleur. He said this on Monday. Okay. So I don't know why they have him on the injury report. Usually you don't put players on IR on the injury report, but that's substantial when you, especially like with what you've seen. I think that the hard part for a lot of Bears fans to get behind is the belief in what we've seen. Courtney, I was 10 the last time we had an offensive line.
Yeah. I mean, it's been so long, I think, for so many fans that it almost felt like it just kind of like rinse, repeat. Like, this is the game where you don't have any real edge in because it had been so one-sided for so many years. And, 2018, that opening game where Rodgers gets whatever shot up into his ankle, and he comes out, like that felt like the closest it had been to finally turning. And then there'd been bits and pieces here and there over, I guess, however many 6 seasons, 7 seasons since then. But it does feel like it has the prospect now of changing. Now, obviously, the Bears would have to do a lot to, get even in the win column against 100%. The team. But when you
think LaFleur is 11-1 versus us,
like he is. And when you take a look at how the Bears could win this game with a dominant run game and with an opportunistic defense and all the things that are work in their favor that the Packers may or may not be able to mitigate, it finally feels like they have a strength that carries over week to week, but something that your opponent can't easily manipulate. Like that, I don't know the last time that would have happened with this team in this specific rivalry.
I couldn't even tell you. I'd assume Lovie Smith. I would assume, when Brett Favre was there, they had kind of figured out Brett Favre, but that was so short-lived because Aaron Rodgers shows up and, the dominance starts right back up right after that. So it's been years since you've been able to say that. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, I look at this matchup and there is a part of me where you have to zoom out. You look at everything that the Packers have been through this year, but it almost feels like there's a lot of areas where the Bears are clearly the better football team going into this game. Doesn't mean it's not a tough game. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be a close game. You're going into Lambeau versus a Packer team that I do think is good, but I think that there are specific holes, like you said, that this Bears team can find ways to exploit. And one thing we've seen about Ben Johnson over this time, which I think has been the most phenomenal part of this coaching staff coming in, they found ways to exploit the things that we haven't seen happened in the past, especially in this rivalry. We've gone into Packers games and said, we've got an advantage running the football, but when it came down to it, you can't run the football when you're down 2 touchdowns, right? But you've also got an opportunistic defense that can take the football away here. So I think there's a lot of factors that do favor the Bears going into this game where, as we get later into the week, you kind of feel like, well, maybe the Bears are the better team going into this matchup, even though I think the best player in this matchup, of course, is Micah Parsons.
Yeah. And I mean, but knowing that they can run at Micah Parsons, knowing that they can, not having Caleb have to ID all these different players, whether it's on the defensive line between Rashawn Gary, Micah Parsons, all of the things that have played into why they've been good at getting after the quarterback. But then it's the safeties, and we know how Ben Johnson feels about that unit, in that tandem. So there's all these things that would stack up to make you think that the Packers have a true advantage here, especially on the defensive end or the defensive, defensive line, everything, on the defense. But the way that we've seen the Bears win games in spite of who's not out there, in spite of all of that, and watching Dennis Allen get creative with personnel and different sub packages that they've had to run, generating pressure out of, 6 DB formations and being able to be still aggressive. The one thing you would walk away from the first 13 weeks of the season saying is that the Bears, no matter what obstacle, health or otherwise, has been thrown their way in games, they found ways to adjust. And they don't the thing with the Packers is you could look at their wins and their losses and what their schedule tells you about, the loss to the tie that they had with the Dallas Cowboys one week before, or 1 week after, or 1 week after the Bears beat them.
After the Bears beat them,
So that factors in. Then obviously they lost to the Browns because of some, a dumb Jordan Love decision late in that game that led to Cleveland being in position to boot a field goal, and then they overlook the Panthers, and they fall in that game where they absolutely shouldn't have. The week later, they fall to the Philadelphia Eagles in an ugly offensive performance. Like, the Bears have an edge because of the common opponents that they've played and the way that they've played those common opponents that I think factors into how we view both teams right now based on what the resume says and what they've done.
I love that my husband's so handy. He leaves more money for the important stuff. Gosh darn it, Steve.
Oh. Don't be like Steve. Call Avondale Roofing. DIY is for Pinterest, not your roof.
Yeah. I think that this is going to be a different world for Bears fans to live in, where you actually have an opportunity. And I'll say this, an opportunity, and Courtney, kind of what Ben Johnson told us to begin the season. We now know this team's identity.
Mm-hmm.
They are a extremely strong, the best, if they're second best, I guess, by yardage. But I would say when you've got two running backs doing what we've seen Kyle Monunga and DeAndre Swift do, I think you can make the argument that they probably have the best run game in football. On top of that, you have a quarterback that's been extremely clutch in the fourth quarter. You have a defense that's been extremely opportunistic. Like, this team comes into this game with a true identity, and I don't think there was any point that we could say that in the last probably 4 or 5 seasons of the Chicago Bears, maybe even longer than that, because we haven't seen this team build an identity of who they are, arguably since Urlacher and Briggs left the field. You knew what you were getting then. You knew you were getting a strong defense that was going to be keep the points low, and you had a run game that was going to be able to find a way to get you enough to try and compete in that game. That hasn't been the case since Briggs and Urlacher have left here. I know we had the pop-up in 2018, but the true identity of that team was kind of the defense and a lot of smoke and mirrors. Like, it wasn't a real identity offensively. I don't think we come into this game without an identity on both sides of the ball.
For as much as things have changed, the identity of this team has reflected historically what it's been in this franchise. Dominant run game, dominant defense. Now, the defense and the way that it's been playing and how it's become so dominant with the takeaways and the turnover margin, like they're plus 17, no other team's better than plus 9. That's different because the pass rush has been inconsistent. So they've had to find other ways to do it, but it still is the fabric of this franchise. Defense and run game, things that travel, things that against your opponent, that you could, like against your rival, rather, that you should rely on. And it's another game in the elements. All of these games from here on out are going to be in cold weather. Their run game, as they've all talked about, the run game travels, and it travels really well. And I think that this is a situation where they have a clear edge going in. And it's not to take anything away from what Jordan Love has done. I thought he was terrific last week. He was and they have, we talk about identity. It's taken the Packers last 3 games. They lose Tucker Kraft and they're trying to figure out, like, what are we without, your top pass catcher, the guy who creates a mismatch at the tight end position. And it's been huge for Jordan Love. And then other guys like Jaden Reed going in and out of the lineup because of injuries. Like, who are they? They've kind of figured it out the last couple of weeks too, who they are. And I think that the way that Jordan Love has settled into that is a very good thing for the Packers. But I just think that the Bears are going to have ways and weapons that they can exploit that, and that they would not have been able to in previous seasons.
Yeah, I think this matchup, the one thing I looked at from the Lions game that's been incredibly different for the Packers when the Packers went up against the Lions last week, the pass catchers, I know this is a novel concept, caught the football. That has not been something that we have seen be consistent in Green Bay throughout Jordan Love's tenure as the quarterback. I mean, we probably
they had 25 drops.
You know what I mean? Like, we probably can go back to the some of the end of the Aaron Rodgers years as well, where there were a lot of drop passes, young wide receivers, but now those guys have to be relied on. Christian Watson targeted 10 times, brought in 4 catches. One of them was a massive one, though. Dantavian Wicks caught 6 of his 7 catches. We haven't seen him be that efficient this season. And so I think that's something as well that that Dennis Allen is probably going to try and take advantage of. And it's going to be interesting because before we get into our underdog play, Courtney, Deshaun Wright, quiet as is kept, has made him a nice little stretch here over this last month as he's been named the NFC Player of the Month. Absolutely has been balling out here for the Chicago Bears, and he's kind of worked himself into somebody who went from being, what do we want to say, the 5th or 6th string DB at one point, like a guy that just kind of was signed off of Al Harris reference, to somebody I don't know if the Bears can move on from at the end of this season.
So, I mean, they signed him the day after the Vikings cut him in the spring. And obviously that comes from a Al Harris recommendation. He had been with him in Dallas. And like, he looks like a completely different player now than he did when he was with the Vikings. He looks honestly back to like his Oregon State days, with the stuff that made him a 3rd-round pick to begin with. And you know, what he's done this, like, so they put this out today. You know, it's a well-deserved honor. Like, thinking about like all of the big momentum swings that he has caused this Bears team to have. You go back to the Vikings game, he has that interception in the end zone. Now, obviously the offense can't do anything with it. On the other, they fail to do anything with it, like capitalizing off that possession. But then, you know, a couple weeks later, he has last week in Philadelphia, he rips the ball away from Jalen Hurts on the tush push and sets up a touchdown drive there. 19 tackles, 6 passes defended, 3 interception, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. He has more takeaways collectively. I know Kevin Byard's the interception leader on this team, but he has more takeaways collectively than anybody else on this team. And it does make you think when Ben Johnson says we have to find a way to, you know, keep him on the field. Same thing he said about CJ Gardner-Johnson, but how do you let this guy out of the building? You know what I mean? Like, this guy has he's developed into a star in this defense. And I don't think that you can look at it and say, oh, like, you know, let him test free agency. No, start working on the extension now, because what they've learned, the hard lesson of, we think our secondary is going to be great, and then they get hit with injuries. Now they know you can never have an overabundance at that position. And he has been so versatile. He's been the glue. Like, starting 11 of 12 games because they needed an outside corner. Jalen Johnson's been out of the lineup. Tyreek Stevenson's been out of the lineup. Like, we obviously know what the nickel spot, what the injury stuff with Kyler Gordon, but Deshaun Wright has been the like model of consistency and dependability for this team that I don't see how you can't find some way, unless he really wants to test free agency, which is his right. He's earned it. I hope he makes a lot of money somewhere. He's a great dude, and he's had such an incredible journey getting to this point. But he fits so well into your scheme. You don't have another corner that size. He uses that 6'5" frame to leverage his matchups. Like, when you find somebody who can do that, you don't let them out of your building.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing that we've seen out of him, especially over this last month, is there have been up and downs, but he exhibits what I think is the biggest trait you have to have as a cornerback. He's able to forget, right? The T. Higgins play, huge play. It's like, oh my God, he got beat up. Finds a way to get a turnover in that game. The AJ Brown, right? Like, AJ Brown basically threw him aside, scores a touchdown, comes back in, has a nice pass defended play, and then strips the football away from Jalen Hurts on the tush push, right? Like, he continues to find ways to have that almost, I call it the goldfish memory on that, right? Like, it's 3 seconds to play. Yeah, you got to flush it. You got to get on to the next play. Those are guys that I think are very beneficial. And I'll say this, I think he is the prototype of what the future of your DB units are going to look like. Hopefully we have Jalen Johnson here for a long time and he continues to be dominant, but that is the model that Dennis Allen wants. That is the kind of player that Dennis Allen wants in that DB room. That's why they go out and they draft Zay Frazier, who we didn't see this year because of something personal that he's dealing with, right? So I think all of those things, you know, when you look at what Deshaun Wright is, there is no way that you can let a guy like this out of the building, because he's the kind of guy that Dennis Allen is going to want to draft here in the future. And maybe, you know, you can get away with paying him a little less than some of the top guys in football, right? But I would think he's coming looking for a pretty big number. At a minimum, he can beat his chest and say, hey, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but I've given up less yards than Trayvon Diggs when he got his contract, and I'm on pace to have a good amount of interceptions just like he did. He was in Dallas when that happened. I think that's kind of an example that he may end up looking at to try and get this contract done?
I mean, he's going to make a handsome payday. Now, is it going to reset the market? No. You have a 1-year sample size of that. No one's like, I don't think that would be anywhere you start the conversation, but a hefty raise from where he's at right now on maybe a 2-3 year deal to keep him in the fold. Like, why wouldn't you at this point? You figured out the formula for what works in your secondary. You try to keep as many of those players as you can, and they've got some hard decisions they're going to have to make. Obviously, Kevin Byard's a free agent after this year. He's on the other side of 30. Like, what do you do there? Like, he's got 6 interceptions. He's been incredible. He doesn't miss games. Like, Jaquan Brisker is going to be a free agent. What do you do there? He has missed games, not so much this year, but obviously the concussion stuff and all that, all the injury history from his first 3 seasons. How do you approach that? Tyreek Stevenson's going to be coming due at some point soon. What do you do there? Like, there's
changing a guard possibly.
Like, there's a lot of pieces that in the short term, you have 3 guys headed towards free agency. Beyond that, like Stevenson next year's heading into a contract season. I don't think you let you know what your core is right now in the secondary. I don't think you let any of those guys go. Like, that to me is like your priority in free agency. Try to re-sign everyone if you can. It's going to be hard. Obviously, it's kind of a, it's a rainbow way of looking at it. Like, it's get everybody here. But like, if you prioritize it, I think that you prioritize Nashawn Wright, Kevin Byard, Jaquan Brisker in that order.
Yeah, I would agree with you, especially and Byard. I remember after he signed his contract and we were up at Hallis and finally got to talk to him. 1, he's emerged as one of the leaders of this team, but 2, he's just incredibly self-aware, and I thought that was amazing. I remember him saying, "Guys, listen, I'm 33 years old. I'm probably going to be signing 1-year deals the rest of my career. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be in the market for these 2 to 3 year deals anymore because I know that that's not going to be advantageous for me." And I thought that realization was very real for his age, and yet he's come out and he's played phenomenally. A 1-year deal might look really good for Kevin Byard going into next season. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears can do to keep everybody in the building. At a minimum, you have them all right now, and that feels very good going into this Green Bay Packer game. And we do got to get to our underdog play before we get to the final topic, talking about, and let me know in the comments. It seems like I set Packer World on fire the other day. I got people calling me all kind of names out here. I'm used to it. You think you can hurt me? My own fan base goes it. You can't hurt me, Packers fans. But do the Green Bay Packers have a good win this season? We're going to look at the schedule because based on the Bear math that people used all week, or all season, I should say, I think there's a question mark out there. We'll talk about that coming up next. But first, got to talk about our underdog play here, Courtney. It's my pick today. And Courtney, I'm going higher on, I can't believe that it's set this low. I get it. 6th best rushing defense in football here for the Green Bay Packers. But DeAndre Swift, 48.5 rush yards. That seems like a slap higher and run to the bank on that. Like, I feel like this run game is going to be the focal point of this team yet again. It almost feels like yet again there's more of a belief in what this defense can do than what the Bears offense will do. I'm believing in what Ben Johnson and this offense have cooking on the run game. I'm going DeAndre Swift higher than 48.5 rush yards.
I like that. No, I think that's, the right play here, because obviously you look at what Gibbs and Montgomery were able to do. They both hit, I believe, higher than that last week. So, the Packers made Lions, they made them pick their spots. Obviously, their one spot was going to be Jamison Williams, and that's how they were going to have to win that game. And they came up short with that. But with the way that they contained, you think about the parallels between the Bears run game and what the Lions have, you think about how they tried to contain both of them. There's still Gibbs had 68 yards. Montgomery had 32 last week. So 48, that was the one that was under. I think it's the way that they used Kyle Monangai to kind of set the tone and then use DeAndre Swift to break through. That would then play into him having higher than 48. Maybe Monangai gets limited. I still think, 68 feels pretty low. That was the high for them last week with Montgomery, but they are a good rushing defense. I still think you can run on this team.
And I'll be honest with you, Courtney, I think that what we see in Detroit now, the new style, if you want to say that they've adopted here post Ben Johnson. I get it. Jahmyr Gibbs is amazing. You want the ball in his hands as much as possible. But what I think put him over the top was how they utilized Montgomery to offset him. Quiet as is kept. Ben Johnson has built that here. He has built that Detroit run game for sure here in Chicago. He's got the offensive line playing at a high level. Their offensive line kind of, Frank Ragnow
That's what I think the difference is, because of
100%.
why Detroit wasn't able to get much going last week on their own outside of facing a really good run defense. The Bears offensive line is, top 2, maybe number 1 right now in the NFL. Like, that's a big reason why the run game was so effective and should be able to carry over.
Yeah, I believe in this O-line. I believe in this run game, and I believe in Ben Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go out here and make some money. Right now, the 3 that we have, Courtney went 190.5 higher for Caleb Williams pass yards. Yurko went higher on a Jordan Love interception yesterday, and I'm going DeAndre Swift rush yards higher, 48.5. We'll finish it out tomorrow with J-Max so that you guys get the full play, but make sure that you download the app, sign up with the promo code CBP to score $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code CBP. And if you want to, you only need 3. So technically, if you like the numbers that you got right now, you can play this right now and then come back to the podcast and finish out today's episode. Underdog, make picks, win money. EO, cue the disclaimer. Must be 18 years or older, 19 or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or over in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Welcome back in here to the Chicago Bears podcast. Pat, the designer, Courtney Cronin, back at it again. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love as always. Let us know your thoughts in the comments on the topics that we have talked about to this point. Is this same old Bears Packers, or you feel like you need to be a little bit confident? And should the Chicago Bears re-sign Deshaun Wright? I don't know if you saw the comments on Tuesday's episode, Courtney, but there was a bunch of people standing with you.
Yeah, because people don't want to be told how to, eat their food. So I will carry the baton for those people.
I'm not gonna. Somebody commented, they were like, "Thank you, Courtney, for speaking up for the voiceless." I was like, you could have just put ketchup on the hot dog, and then tell everybody to
tell everybody to do it. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Let's finish it out with this, Courtney, because I talked about this a couple of days ago. It set the world on fire, and it set the Bears-Packers world, I should say, on fire. And it kind of irritated a lot of Packer fans in a way that I think it irritated Bears fans all year. But based on how we look at what teams have done throughout the year, all year we kept hearing the Bears don't have a good win. Bears haven't beaten anybody with a winning record. The Bears haven't gone out there and beaten any top quarterbacks. We beat Dak Prescott. We beat Jaden Daniels. There was a lot of question marks on what the Bears have done. And I'll be honest with you, if we're using that logic, I think that we could say there are a lot of question marks on what we've seen from the Green Bay Packers this year. You've got 2 losses that I think a lot of people would say are bad losses. The Browns and the Panthers. I get it. The Panthers are in the playoffs right now, but I think a lot of people would look at those sideways. And then the one matchup that you feel like is the standard matchup there, you couldn't put up 33 yards against the Eagles in the first half and you lose that game 10-7. Do the Green Bay Packers have a good win this season?
Yeah, I think they do. I think that would be unfair to say that the Lions are a bad team. The Lions may not make the playoffs as the byproduct of a crowded NFC North and what's happening right now in the NFC West, but that doesn't make them a bad team. But I do think that we look at these things through the lens of when the wins happen. So let's take a look at what they did in week 1. If I can pull up the schedule here. So they beat the Lions in Lambeau Field 27-13. We know how bad, ugly. The Lions weren't putting up a touch. They weren't scoring until the fourth quarter. They did not look good in Johnny Morris's first game as a play caller. Subsequently, Dan Campbell has had to take his play calling duties back. And I think that factors into how we viewed them, what they did in week 1, how they did it in week 13. The Lions were really banged up. especially up front. They lose Amon-Ra St. Brown in that game. Dan Campbell and his fourth down decisions continue to backfire, like all these things. But does that make the Lions a bad team? No, they're still an 8-win team at this point. They, I think that Detroit, or rather 7-win team, they're 7-5. They're third in the NFC North. Are they a bad team? I don't think so. I don't understand the logic. Like when people look at, you can look at the Packers schedule right now. I'll give you a couple bad losses. You mentioned Cleveland. That game comes down to a field goal because there was a back-breaking interception from Jordan Love late in that game. If you're comparing the two, when has Caleb Williams had a back-breaking interception that has cost this team in this season? He hasn't.
Yeah, I was gonna say last year versus Minnesota, I guess, in the overtime versus Minnesota.
He has not had one. So okay, there's one thing you could look at and say, all right, if you're applying the Bear logic to it, like how some people poke holes in Chicago's schedule, right around
that's a bad loss.
Right around the same time, like when they beat Washington week 2, that was in the Thursday night game. Jane Daniels gets hurt in that game, but that was still considered a good Washington team at the time. The Bears, the Bears take Dallas in week 3. They win that game. The Packers go 40-40 in an overtime tie against the Cowboys a week later. They beat Cincinnati. Well, the Bears beat Cincinnati by putting up more points in that game, coming down to the 2-minute drill, and Caleb Williams coming out as a hero in that game. The win that they had, I would say, in Pittsburgh, that was a pretty dominant win because
it was a dominant win for the Packers.
They pulled away in the second half in a way that stunned that Steelers defense on the road. So I'd say that's a good win. I think the Lions win last week was a good win. So I don't buy the notion rather that Green Bay doesn't have any quality wins on their resume. I think they do. And a lot of obviously the crossover and common opponents, the Bears have the edge in. Obviously not yet with the Lions because the best they can do would be to split. They split with the Vikings. Their truest test. Obviously, they've got the Bears this week, but then the Packers have to go on the road to play at Denver the following week. That is their by far hardest game of this season, and I think you'll see, or you'll at least know at that point, how legitimate they are. That to me is their test. The Bears and the Eagles last week, legitimizing kind of what the Bears did at 9-3. Not taking anything away from what Chicago has built, but I think that game more than anything else against Denver and that defense specifically will tell you what kind of team the Packers are. But I think they do have quality wins. I don't think it's fair to say they don't.
See, here was my whole point with the whole thing. I think that the Bears are the first kind of true test that they're facing because the Bears have proven over and over again that this is who they are. I think this is a close game. You're going to have to overcome a clutch factor with this Bears team that has been phenomenal this season. And Jordan Love just hasn't. There are 2 games this year where he has back-breaking. If I'm not mistaken, the end of that Panthers game, Green Bay has the ball to drive down the field. Jordan Love throws up a duck that gets picked off, and the game is over.
And their offense was terrible that whole day.
Offense was terrible that day. And that's a very similar game. But I would bet you, if anything, Ben Johnson is putting on tape from what the Panthers did 5 weeks ago at this point, and saying this is how you go out there and you beat this team. Rico Dowdle ran for 130 yards that game. And again, I'm not saying that the Lions are a bad team, but is it the caliber of team that we've seen the Lions be? I don't think that we can say it is.
No,
I don't think
it's
that
not
we can look at that
it was
team
a year ago, but they're still a good team. They're an above 500 team. The problem with the Bears is that they were facing all these teams that were the Steelers, I believe, were sick. Were they right at 500?
Steelers was 6-5,
6-4. So they were above 500. The Bears hadn't faced a team like that in weeks because it was the Saints, it was the Ravens, who they lost to. That's a bad loss because they lost to a backup quarterback. And then the Giants and kind of where the Vikings were at that time. I don't think anybody was really giving them a whole ton of credence. But now that you do have that marquee win, can you follow it up with another one? Because I'd say Green Bay is a good team. Are they
100%.
It's a big test for both of them. I do think that their bigger test will be against Denver next week. But I don't buy the logic that the Lions are not a good team. And that's not that their resume, that the Packers resume is fraudulent because they beat them twice.
I think
they're very different teams the 2 times that they faced them.
I would say the Packers' losses are bigger than some of those wins. Not to say that, and again, I think the Lions are such a different team now that it's going advantage Packers here. That offensive line falling apart. We've seen Jared Goff behind struggling offensive lines. He's not the same quarterback that he was. So like, I'm not surprised by that. But when you look at the Eagles loss, that was your first test in my mind, right? You're tested against the Super Bowl champions.
Mhm.
You put up 33 yards of offense in the first half of that game, and you finished that game.
They look terrible. So did the Eagles that day, but they look terrible.
Yeah, but again, with the ball in your hands to win the game, and you find a way to not get that done. Like, those are the things to me where I look at the losses that you have and I say, I don't know if you're the team that you're beating your chest about being here, because these are teams that have skill sets that maybe are very similar to the Bears, especially with what the Panthers have done. It's literally all O-line play and run game at this point. I don't think Bryce Young is a very good quarterback, but you found ways to slow down that Packer offense, taking the football away and getting pressure around Jordan Love. Those are things that I think the Bears can emulate. And it's why I look at it and I say, some of these losses on this schedule, we need to magnify a little bit louder. That's all I'm saying.
The Bears have less bad losses. They have 3. The Packers have 3 as well. But like
3 and a tie.
The Carolina loss, the Cleveland loss, like if you're stacking them up like side by side, yes, the Bears loss to the Ravens is at the top of their list. That's a bad loss. But then the other 2, easily take the cake because of the way that they lost those games. And they overlooked the Panthers. I'm sorry. Like coming into that game, they were coming off the big win that they had in Pittsburgh. That is so atrocious the way that they played in that game. And they looked like they were sleepwalking. The Bears haven't looked like that in any game this year. The only one you could say is that they looked like, because they did. But I think about the Ravens, like the injuries obviously did not help them early in the first half against the Lions. Yeah. And they had 2 dominant drives that ended with penalties and field goals against the Ravens. And then they kind of fell apart and just were running to play catch up. The Bears have the advantage in less bad losses than, and it's a weird category to try to quantify here, but those two, the Panthers and the Browns one are absolutely magnified for Green Bay more than anything on the Bears schedule. Even a 31-point, ass kicking that happened in Detroit. Yes, that was awful, but they weren't even in that game.
They were figuring it out.
They were. That was again. You look at when that happened on the schedule. Week 2, very different team than they are. From however many weeks ago that was now.
And I would say, 2 games this year? That's one of the pop-up, shocking, high-scoring games for the Lions this season. Like, again, they have been a very different team without Ben Johnson. I think that, what we've seen, if I were looking at it apples to apples with everything stacked up, I would say coming into this game, what you've seen is that the Bears at least have had to figure it out, have figured it out, and are now positioned to be the better team in this matchup. But of course, it's in Lambeau. Green Bay has some wins over, Detroit, who was the darling of the NFL last season. And I think that has pushed them to a level of confidence from among a lot of the pundits out there where they say the Packers are the better football team here. I don't know if we've seen that this season.
Yeah, I think that, this game obviously goes a long way in determining that. The fact that the 1 seed, for the Bears to be able to hold on to it, they obviously have to win this game. For the division title, it's not completely decided, but you get a nice big lift if you, in this first game of 2 in 13 days, if you win that, then you have, the percentages are insane. Like, the Bears go, if they win here, 64% chance to 22% chance of winning the division with a loss. Like, the magnitude of what this one means because of where the Lions are in all of this and in what happened with Green Bay last week of sweeping them on the season. It's a 2-team race from here on out. Yeah. And the Bears have everything in front of them to be able to continue in the position that they're in this 2-team race.
How do you have this game playing out, Courtney? Do the Bears leave out of here still holding on to the division, or do the Bears take an L to the Green Bay Packers and got to fight your way back to the top?
I think this is a 27-20 game for the Bears. I have them winning in Lambeau Field.
27 would be crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I have this as I do. Listen, I know I'm talking my crap about the Packers. I hate y'all. Y'all all suck. But I do think that they're a good enough football team that you have to respect them. And this is a divisional matchup. You saw what Minnesota is able to do in divisional matchups in games where they literally are y'all are not a good football team. Divisional play is always tougher. So I think that this is a little bit closer. Give me a 24-21 Bears win in this game. And it takes a Caleb Williams clutch drive down the field and a Jordan Love interception to seal it. I need that. I need that in my life.
I think the Jordan Love interception after he was like sick last like 3 games. He's 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I think it's coming.
We are due for a Toyotathon failure. Usually Toyotathon starts. This guy's balling. You got to watch this guy. But I think the Bears get the best of them. But let us know how you guys feel in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Who do you have winning this game? Make sure, come on. It's Packer week. Drop an FGB in this bud, man. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. For Courtney Cronin, it's your boy Pat the Designer. Back at it again. Bear down. One love. Peace.